Isle of Wight Volunteer Stories is a podcast brought to you by the Isle of Wight Volunteer Centre, celebrating the wonderful contribution that volunteers make to island life. We'll be hearing about the different roles and activities that people do, what they get out of it, and what motivates them to start in the first place. Volunteers share some of the highs and lows of their lives, talk about the skills that they learn and the connections that they make on their volunteer journey. We hope this podcast will give you an insight into a world you may not be familiar with, will demonstrate that volunteers come from all walks of life, and perhaps it will inspire you to start your own volunteer story. I'm Sandy Cicognani from Community Action Isle of Wight, and I'll be your host on this podcast. So this morning I'm meeting Keith Miller, who's a relatively new volunteer for Embracing Age. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning, Sandy.
Would you like to just start by introducing yourself, telling me a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so as you've said, Sandy, I'm quite new into the role. Just been a couple of months into it, really. So the experience is limited. But my background is I retired from working full time at the end of June last year. Mm-hmm. I'm an engineer. I was an aeronautical engineer and also run my own business. And for 40 plus years involved in the aviation and engineering sectors. So a big change for me to stop that, because it kind of becomes part of who you are and the way it to some degree drives the way you think. Yeah. And engineers tend to be people that want to find solutions to things, and in life there isn't always a solution, and that can be a hard lesson to learn.
Yes, yeah, okay. Yeah. So what prompted you to start volunteering?
Well, Sandy, a good few months ago, Rebecca Savage, who leads the organisation here on the Isle of Wight, she came to the church that my wife and I go to, so we're both Christians, and she spoke about the work of Embracing Age, about the organisation, and just put it out there that if anybody was interested in finding out more or perhaps getting involved, and I had to think about it, and I thought, well, I've got a bit more time now, still got, like retired people do have, still got quite a lot going on, but I did have more free time. So I thought I can do that for a couple of hours a week. It's not a big commitment, particularly if it was in the area where I live. Why not? Can
you tell me a little bit about what actually you do as a volunteer?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I've just got one gentleman who I've been visiting, and that's in a care home in the Sandown area. And it's very much befriending. It's very much going in and introducing yourself, trying to find out a little bit about the person that you're visiting, understanding their background and their situation, and always confidentiality is really important, so be careful not to sort of step into those kind of areas. So sort of general things about the person's background. And the gentleman I've been visiting, so we talked about his experiences and touched on some of his family and how he came to the Isle of Wight, and this particular gentleman came from the West Midlands, and just taking an interest in people. And this particular gentleman who I've been visiting, the two managers who run the care home, who are really lovely, really friendly and lovely, and really caring, and that really came across loud and clear from the first time I stepped into the care home, and also that was reflected by other staff in the building as well. But they explained to me, Sandy, that this particular gentleman didn't have any family on the Isle of Wight, didn't have any close family at all, really, and didn't actually get any visitors. So he had no visitors. So I was his first visitor, and he'd been there for some time. So that was really interesting, and that kind of struck me, because I didn't realise it was quite like that. I kind of assumed that most people would have family and have people visiting them. So the idea that some people don't get any visitors was quite an eye-opener, really, in that sense. But it was a lovely man, and I'm pleased to say that we've connected, and that's very good. The only issue's been really that, unfortunately, he's been unwell, and he's been in hospital for some time now, and I've actually visited him. I chatted to Rebecca about this and spoke to the management of the care home, and checked that it was okay for me to visit him in hospital. And I've actually been into the hospital and visited him a couple of times, and he's been very pleased, I believe, that I've been in. Unfortunately, his health is not so good, and that's made it more challenging. Communications become a bit more challenging. But it helps as a volunteer, it's helped me to, at an early stage of my volunteering, to understand some of the processes that people go through better than perhaps I did, Sandy.
Right. And how was it? I'm just thinking about the first time you went in. It must have been a little bit nerve-wracking, isn't it, to see somebody completely new?
It was a little bit nerve-wracking because it's not an environment that I'm particularly familiar with. I've got, through my own family, I've had family members that have had times in care homes, so it's not completely alien to me. But I think going in and seeing a stranger, if you like, that was a different experience. And but as I say, everybody was very, very welcoming, and very grateful, actually, that that people were coming to visit this particular resident, because I don't think, I know the work's looking to be expanded, but I think there's still many people that don't have visits. That's my understanding.
And you weren't just sort of thrown in at the deep end. You did receive some training and things before you went in. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And really from day one, from the moment I had a chat with Rebecca, and then embarked on the training. The training is really divided up into a number of modules covering different areas, and you have to complete one before you move on to the next one. But they were very informative and very thought-provoking as well. And that took a number of days to actually go through that process, and you have to complete all that. And it's all online. Some of it's delivered by Tina English, who's the lady that leads the organisation overall. But it was very, very useful, and through each stage of that training, really, it made me think, it made me consider things, and gave me information that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
So it was all very, very useful. And more recently, Sandy, in the last few weeks, I've also completed an additional module on dementia training, which is very helpful as well, because as I understand it, a very high proportion of people in care homes do suffer with dementia at some level. So it's all been very, very good, and I felt very well supported. And if I needed any help or had some questions, it was very easy to speak to Rebecca and get those questions answered. And also I've been to We've had one social event, and Embracing Age are very good in terms of on the social side, getting people together, fundraising. But what's been really useful on that first event that we went to is just meeting other volunteers and beginning to get to know those volunteers, maybe make some friendships over time, and share some experiences. So it's a very supportive environment.
That's great. I was going to say, I mean, because that was going to be my next question: is what do you get out of it, and why do you carry on with it?
Yeah, well, I thought for a long time that the sort of elderly people are, and I'm getting towards that myself. I'm only recently retired, but that's down the road for me. But I felt for a long time that they are kind of a forgotten generation, and particularly in the days that we're living with technology, I think the advantage of being newly out of work is that I'm fairly up to speed on things. I can do, use the internet and understand fairly well the sort of environment that we're living in. But for many people, my mother's a great example. I have a 92-year-old mother who still lives on her own at the moment, and I have other people that I know that are completely sort of mystified by these things and don't understand them and can't use them, and many people, I think, feel marginalised in the days that we're living, and I think also that we're often not very good at valuing people who are older. They've lived a life, that they've, whatever that life is, and all their experiences and their own personal experience, knowledge, and understanding. We don't put enough value on that. I think there's a big focus on young people, and that's great. But I think there's another generation that we're talking about here that have so much to contribute, and I think they can feel very much devalued and undervalued and not important.
Yeah.
So that's a big motivator, because they are important, and what they think, what they feel, the life they've lived, their experiences, they're all really important things.
Yeah, that's great. And it must be great to know that you're making quite a significant difference to an individual just by going to visit them once a week.
Yeah, I hope so. Certainly the feedback with the gentleman that I've been visiting, both in the care home and also in his hospital situation, has been very positive, and they've said it's made a real difference to him, and he really looks forward to me coming in to see him, and that's very encouraging for me as well.
Yeah.
And just to know that you're making a small difference to somebody's life, in some way you're enhancing their life, and that's a really lovely thing. To hear.
That's good. And you said, your experience as an engineer is quite different to what people might think is necessary to be a befriender. I don't know, people have odd ideas of what a befriender is, but what sort of skills and things do you think you bring to your volunteer role?
That's a very good question. I think I've been aware for years that I have quite good people skills, and that's been really helpful and beneficial in my work experience. I've worked with all kinds of people, from regulators in the aviation sector down to the I don't mean in a derogatory sense, but the people that are doing the cleaning on the factory floor, whatever it is, and sometimes in my working experience, you have to convince people that maybe changes in processes or how you work or how you do things. Or I've done some training myself, delivered training, and also had lots of training in my work experiences, and take people with you. It's very important to be like that, and I've been able to build good relationships through my working life, and that's been very, very beneficial. So I think I bring that skill, Also, I'm interested in people.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing about their background and their experiences because it's important. It's valuable. And the other thing I was going to say, Sandy, is that going back quite a few years ago, my wife worked in the criminal justice system, and when we lived in London, and through that we frequently talked about her work and stuff that she was involved in, and through that I became a volunteer for victim support. Yeah, victim support, and I did that for a number of years, and that was visiting people that had been the victims of crime, various types of crime, and many people were quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
And found situations that were quite concerning, that I went back and spoke to the various people that I was working with about that. So that's one very useful experience I had for several years doing that. And also through the church we were in London, we did a lot of kind of work just to help people. We used to go and help people tidy up their gardens and do some practical stuff for them. And a lot of those people were older people that just weren't able to do things. So I kind of hopefully bring those things to the table in this new role for me.
Oh, excellent, thank you. And is there anything else you would want to say, perhaps to encourage somebody to sort of put themselves out there and start volunteering?
Well, I didn't know what to expect, and it's been lovely. All the people that I've been involved with, both in Embracing Age and through the care home that I'm currently visiting, and the one gentleman that I've been in contact with so far, everybody's been lovely, been very welcoming, very supportive, and they've got some good structures and processes around that as well, and the training's been very supportive. So it is something that you think, oh, is it for me? And I did think about that. But my experience has been extremely positive, Sandy, and I think that if somebody feels inclined to do that, I would say, come and inquire, because everybody's lovely and are very encouraging and very supportive, and so the training's very good as well. So you absolutely don't feel that you're on your own.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Keith, for coming on this podcast, and thank you for being a volunteer.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Sandy.
If you would like to find out more about how to volunteer, or if you're an organisation looking for volunteers on the Isle of Wight, please go to our website www.iwvolunteer.org or email us on volunteer@actioniw.org.uk.